Welcome to A Taste of the Beach, everyone. I'm Dan Lipton of Beach Cities Media and also publisher of Travel Host Beach Cities Magazine and soon to be premiering travel host of Orange County later this year. And what we do is showcase the very best places to dine, shop, play, and stay in Southern California along the coast. And we do this because we love sharing with our viewers all of these great people that run all these great companies, so you too can enjoy a taste of the beach. Now, our recent shows have continued to deal with the topic of transformative businesses during the pandemic. For instance, last week we spoke with Simon Haxton. He is the master distiller at Portuguese Bend Distillery in downtown Long Beach, where they transformed from making vodka, gin, and rum, three very essential beverages, to hand sanitizer for hospitals and other first responders. But today, my guest is Leisa Reid, and she is a professional speaker and mindset facilitator at Productive Learning, LLC. Welcome to A Taste of the Beach, Leisa.
Thank you for having me, Dan.
You bet. So how is your family holding up and coping during this time?
You know, I think we're doing pretty well. It's so many ups and downs in a way in terms of us getting used to all being together. My husband is a golf instructor, so he's been home and we're getting a lot of things done around the house, which is really cool. And he's had some virtual clients and having people get set up in their own, you know, whether it's basement, garage, backyard, front yard, that kind of thing, big living room. And then my daughter is a junior in high school, and I think she really enjoys not having to go to school. She's a very good student, but I know she misses the friendship part and the socializing of all that school brings. And she's usually in competitions and things like that. So all that got changed. So it's been a lot of shifting. I have been doing a lot more virtual trainings and podcasts and speaking engagements. What I thought would have like all this free time, I realized actually it just gives me more time to do more of what I love to do. So I actually enjoy being at home. I would like the choice of being able to go out though. And I know that a lot of us are really excited to get back out there in a safe way.
Sure. Now, obviously, your husband is normally at a golf course, right?
Yes. He's at
So,
Strawberry Farms in Irvine.
love Strawberry Farms.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
You might need to connect me with your husband because my game could definitely use some help.
No problem.
So tell us a little bit about your background, Lisa. Like, where do you hail from, and how did you get involved in your line of work?
Well, I hail from Alaska, which is a little far from California. That's where I was raised. I was raised in Fairbanks, Alaska, and I will tell you the coldest I've been in is 65 below. And now I pretty much wear flip-flops all year round. I mean, I'll wear flip-flops even if it's raining out here. So it takes a lot for me to put some socks on in Southern California.
I'm willing to bet that it's not 84 degrees in Fairbanks right now.
No, I don't think so. No, there's a lot of snow this year actually, and it's been cold.
So you're really the first person that I can think of that is from Alaska. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I just can't think of anybody else. But you grew up there to what age?
I was there till I was 18. I finished high school, and then a month later moved to California. It was always, for many years, a dream of mine to go to school in California, and that's a whole other ball of wax. But I intended to go to college and stay in California. It wasn't like I'm going to try it out and see. It was like, no, this is where I belong. And so that was in 1991. And I was at Cal State Fullerton for my bachelor's and master's program. I love Cal State Fullerton, go Titans. And I taught there while I was in graduate school. I taught interpersonal communication starting at the age of 22. So I always, you're like, how did you get into this line of work? Like I've always had that desire to teach, especially when I've kind of like figured something out. I'm like, okay, I can do this. Like I was a gymnastics coach when I was in college because I was a great gymnast as a little kid. So I knew how to break things down and listen to people and adjust to different personalities and bite-size something so that someone could make progress. And I just always loved that role. So it actually started at a young age and has continued on to what
So
I do.
here's a little known fact about that I know about Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a big hockey fan, right?
Yes.
And I've had season seats to the Ducks since their inception.
Cool.
Approximately 20 years ago, Honda Center, was then called the Arrowhead Pond,
Mm-hmm.
hosted the Frozen Four, which is like the college basketball version of, hockey's version of the Final Four,
Mm-hmm.
right? For basketball, it's called the Frozen Four, and a school hosts it. Okay, but the school that hosted it at in Anaheim was not a local school. It was University of Alaska Anchorage.
Yep.
So because I guess no one was willing to schlep up to Alaska to play in this tournament, they came down as the host, did it in Anaheim, and the four teams of like Maine and New Hampshire and Boston College, etc., Notre Dame. But I want to say the Seawolves of Alaska Anchorage.
I don't know
Yeah,
I don't know their mascot because I was from Fairbanks, but
oh, that's
I
right,
had been
Fairbanks.
to we call it UAA. I have been
Right.
there for fine arts camp when I was a little kid because my mom actually lived in Anchorage
And
when I was growing up.
what did your folks do up in Alaska? Anything different than folks do anywhere else, or?
Well, yes, I think so. Well, my dad, why we ended up there in the first place is that my dad was getting his PhD at USC. He's actually a Trojan, and he also was interested in becoming a hypnotherapist. Now, at the time, he still needed to finish up that schoolwork, and he knew of Alaska and knew of Fairbanks because he had played baseball up in Alaska over when he was younger. And that's very common for northern states and Canada to host baseball in the summer. There's summer leagues. And so quite often baseball players have been to Alaska or like northern parts of Canada. Also, his brother had homesteaded up there, which we call like that's when you get a certain amount of land and you develop that land. So my uncle had done that in a city called North Pole. And so my dad had a couple connections up there, and he decided to work for the pipeline so that he could afford to finish working on his PhD. He ultimately became a hypnotherapist. So it's no surprise that I'm in a business where, we work on our subconscious thinking and how do we, reach our potential and, how powerful our thoughts are. My mom ended up creating a career for herself in journalism. And she ended up working for a little tiny paper in Westilla, Alaska in the 80s, and then moved to the Anchorage Times, and then ultimately moved to the Daily Breeze, which is in Torrance, and then ended up at the LA Times for many years. So that's the different paths, but just I have two pretty smart parents.
Yeah, and it is interesting that Alaska, it really did kind of play a role in who you are and what you've become.
Absolutely. It's about like in Alaska, you have to be a survivor in a way. You have to think, okay, if I'm in this situation, like the weather, and anyone who's not just Alaska, but anyone who's dealt with some significant weather in their normal day to day, you got to get creative or the elements will get you. So you kind of have to either be prepared and also be flexible to deal with whatever situation you're in. And I think Alaska really gives you a life lesson in that.
Uh, I think people are intrigued by it. I mean, there must be 3 or 4 shows on television just dealing with Alaska,
Yeah.
from state troopers to truckers to survivalists. And I find it fascinating. I mean, I'm an East Coast kid, so I know how weather plays a part in your life. And I find that people are just generally tougher when they come from places of weather because
Yes.
you just have to be able to adapt and not freak out and just deal with it. And I think we tend to be kind of soft here in that regard
Yes.
because we expect the weather to be beautiful every day, and even mild temperature changes tends to get people a little off here. But it's really interesting how you tie the two together. So please tell our viewers a little bit about Productive Learning as a company, and how do you describe what you do to others and for others?
Yeah. So Productive Learning, which is found on productivelearning.com, was founded actually 28 years ago. So 1 year after I arrived in California, our founder, Lyndon Crow, created his own company. And it's really, if you take a step back and think about how we are as human beings, we, at Productive Learning, we believe that we all have the ability to create and live the life we truly want, right? It's like, okay, what if we just all believe that? Like, we could create the life we truly want. But we also need to address and understand that there's things that have happened or meanings that we've created in our past that can block us from those things, or even dampen that belief that, like, oh, well, I can't have this because, and it's not going to happen for me because of this. And so with that potential, in order to really like release it and let it grow, we believe that you need to nurture and develop that ability. So that's like kind of our why we do what we do. And then the what is, we do this through a variety of workshops. And those could mean a weekend, a year program, or a trip somewhere outside of the United States in the past. That's what we've been doing for 28 years. And we embed a workshop, an experiential piece, so that you can get the self-discovery that really matters to you, and shifts the way you think, and you start to realize, oh yeah, I have this old thinking that's not serving me in this situation. So it's really a process of developing your awareness. I think we would, and Dan, you'd probably agree, we all like, oh, we know we're supposed to be aware. Like, that's a good idea. We should do that. We all want to be more aware. And that's not something that we necessarily have a practice for, or we're like, well, what does that look like? How would that work for me? So it's really a discovery, a self-discovery of like, well, how does that benefit you? What would that mean to you? What kind of changes do you want to have? And how do you understand your own system? So that's the work that we start to get into.
So let me ask you, when you say aware,
Mm-hmm.
is being aware different than being present?
Not, I mean, they're synonymous. It's really about, okay, you, like, if we know how the mind works, like, we have an experience that happens, and then we have thoughts and feelings that occur because of that experience, right? And then we act, we create an action, we move or we don't move, we, avoid making the phone call, we do make the phone call, whatever. And then we get a result. Okay, so that's like a quick way of how our mind works. And then after that result, we might say, well, it didn't work out because of this, or we have some kind of reasoning or assumption, or the slow processing of like why we got the result that we got. Okay. Awareness, where we focus on awareness, is, can you bring that slow thinking of after you have the result, can you bring it to before you act? So you have an experience, then you have thoughts and feelings that happen. Before you act, are you aware and intentional about that next action? What is it that you truly want? Is that action going to actually get you what you want? Is how you approach the situation, knowing about yourself in the past? And so it's really this whole encompassing understanding of your own system. And as much as I'd love to say it's just a quick flip of the switch, it's a growth process to really develop that skill.
Right. So it's kind of like taking a step back, and before you maybe react to a
Yes.
situation, thinking about different ways to approach them to have a better
Yeah.
outcome.
Yes, and knowing that like we have, I don't know if you've ever been in the situation where you've been really what we call maybe hijacked or triggered or just, highly emotional about something, right? You're really angry or really irritated or just kind of irritable. We all have our moments, right? No one on this call, I'm sure, but you might know somebody who's had that experience. And when that happens, we lose our emotional intelligence. Typically, it goes pretty far down and it's inaccessible for a lot of us. So it's like, how can I continue to build up that strength where even if can I lower my ability to be triggered? Yes. So that I have more of that emotional intelligence available to me? Yes. So that I can have a longer relationship filled with love and happiness? Yes. And
Yeah.
less stress, yes. So it's all about that.
Because I think the way it manifests itself, as I understand what you're saying, is that we all have triggers, would be a term
Mhm.
that I might use based
Mhm.
on our past, based on how we were talked to even as children.
Yep.
Um, and somebody will say something, especially people who you have emotional connections with, right?
Mhm.
So it seems to matter what they say to
Yeah.
you and how they say it. And if something doesn't come out right, we go to a different place.
Mhm.
And um, we lose the ability to be in the moment or productive or whatever until we can process that issue that has now just gotten in our way.
Right. And it'll come out like a lot of times we can sense where we have those soft spots of if we think gosh, I wish they would just stop doing that. They're so annoying. Why do they do this? How come they don't change? Like these are the thoughts that could be happening in our mind. And that's how oh, you're in it. Like there is something within you that is triggered by this other thing outside of you, person, action, whatever. So when we're in that space of I wish they would change, we are the ones feeling the feelings that we don't necessarily enjoy, irritation or anger or whatever. They may not be feeling any of that. So it's like, oh, wait a second, how did I? And if we hope that other people just change and that's our solution, well, we are going to be living a life of disappointment. Because
For sure. Yeah,
we don't have a workshop on that, how to get other people to change.
right, right. I mean, for a lot of times people will just say, with time, sometimes people will come around to what you hope that they will
Yeah.
say, or they're sorry, or whatever the case may be. But you can't. You have to move on and live your life and do all the right things. I feel like along the way, so that you're even prepared for if someone is going uh, to maybe come around to how you'd like them to
Yeah. And what
react.
I have found and what we have found, and we've trained thousands of people through our programs, is that interestingly enough, when like if somebody comes to our programs and maybe they take like a year's worth of workshops, they just like once a quarter they pop in or something like that. A year goes by and they're like, wow, actually that relationship, whether, family member, coworker, whatever, that relationship that was really triggering me before, it doesn't really like, are they just less annoying or like is like, oh, that's interesting, it doesn't like grab me like it used to. And actually then because we change, we start showing up differently to the people around us, and then what do you know, we get a different kind of response and the other person didn't actually change, we changed. And that's what makes it super powerful. You're like, oh my gosh, I don't have nearly the chaos or the conflict or the stress that I used to have. I'm doing things I never thought I could do before. I, built this business. I've done this. I went on a date. I mean, we have all different kinds of, everyone has their own mountain to climb, like what is it that they're trying to achieve?
So let's kind of tie in COVID
Mm-hmm.
into. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sure you can recall your own feelings
Yes.
as this started to move from a Chinese issue to a
At
world issue,
home.
and
Yes.
then here at home, and then the laws changing to limit our, freedom, so to speak. I mean all of that in a good way, right?
Mm-hmm.
But to protect us and to limit the virus, and how perhaps you reacted to it and how your company reacted to it, and maybe how that has affected what you're doing in your work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. We actually had a workshop, I think it was last year, called Navigating Change, which at first we had a request from a client that said, I'm getting older and I'm noticing that like I'm not like medically, some things are occurring that are out of my hands. Like, how do I navigate all this change? And then we realized that all of us are navigating change, even if you've been married for the first time, or you had your first child, or you were retired, or what, like we all are navigating change. And wow, we are all definitely navigating change right now in a really heightened, and it's kind of like, I feel like it's a wave, like the waves just keep coming. For a while, it's kind of calmed down for a little bit, but like there was a point where it was like every day we're like, okay, now you can't do this, and now you can't do that, and okay, now, and so we were all as a global community adjusting to a lot of change. And what I know about people is that we don't really like that too much. we don't like that. We like to feel like we've got some stability and security, and the subconscious mind likes things to stay the same and habitual and safe. That's what we would deem safe. So, knowing how the mind works, I know at our company, we were like, okay, we do a lot of live events. All of our workshops are in person. They have been for years, and that's how we like it. And that's how our clients like it. But we had, for a while, actually back in December, had decided this year we were going to add some virtual components. And we were in the middle of creating that when COVID hit, and we're like, okay, now we're moving from 15 miles an hour to 60 miles an hour. And really, and we actually put together our first webinar. We had over 200 people on the webinar. It was about finding control in uncertainty. And we just launched, actually this Monday, just launched from a virtual workshop called From Anxiety to Empowerment. And so it's all done virtually, and we've got some live components and some recorded components. But we knew that this is a workshop we've had for many, many years, but it was always taught in a live setting. But we knew out of all the workshops that we lead, this is the one that could really help anybody at this point, because we're dealing with fear and panic and worry and stress, financial stress, like all these different kinds of things happening. So that was one way that we really pivoted quickly. And we have like, I think 80 something people in that workshop. So
Will you be running it again, Leisa?
We will. It's a 7-week course currently, and we'll be, probably making adjustments after this first one. And we have so much content. We're probably going to piece some of it out. We're in the process of like, how can we get this out to more people in a more streamlined, quicker, because people need this information.
Yeah, and I think the one of the just diving in with my own opinion here for a moment, working in the hospitality field of let's just publishing a magazine that goes in hotels, and there's no one in hotels, and there's nothing to promote right now, but in everything that I'm reading, I think to be honest, I believe there's a lot of wishful thinking in terms of how quickly we're going to be able to rebound on this. They say that it takes 21 days to break a habit or start a habit. People are getting so used now to social distancing. Mm-hmm. But I really feel like, and with all the talk in the news about another wave of this coming, so we're balancing the need to make our communities healthy enough so we can truly go back to work safely, mm-hmm. against the financial devastation that's already happened, right? Yeah. There's a lot of pressure that people are putting on their state governments to allow them to get back to work. Yet what that workplace is going to look like when they come back is a little bit of an unknown. Now just because of human behavior and what people are learning. Mm-hmm. I just read an article that one of the most prominent hotels in the country, the Four Seasons in Manhattan, is undergoing a drill, right? So I think the hotel is basically closed,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And they're kind of going through drills and planning as to what it would be like to reopen,
Mm-hmm.
right? Things like when you virtual check-ins, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
um, getting on the elevator one party at a time, right? No mini bar in your room.
Mm.
No, no more breakfast buffet.
Mm-hmm.
No extra pillows and blankets in the closets,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
right? So there's a lot of change
Mm-hmm.
from what people are used to that's going to come down the pike. And I really wonder how long, or if ever we approach people like we used to. For us huggers, I'm fearful about ever being able to greet anybody again with a hug. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, I think a lot of the concerns you're talking about are on a lot of people's minds. And one of the things that I've noticed for me, and I don't know if this is what you're asking for, but I have fears as well. I think we all have fears and concerns, especially with this. It's very, hits right in that tender spot of like your financial security, your health, your like your death, you know what I mean? Like it's very it's right there, right? Um, and one of the things that I've been noticing as I go through waves of that myself is I'll utilize a different framing, and I'll explain it in like a timeline. Like you mentioned, like, I don't, and this, I think this is a common one for a lot of people. When is this gonna, like, when can we get back to normal, and how long is this gonna last, and how long can I sustain, and like, what if this goes on for, what if, right? And we start to imagine into the future, and then as you ask those questions, you can actually feel like a little shortness of breath. You could feel like a heart palpitation, or like this stress that kind of comes on. And that's that physiological, emotional panic, right? So, okay, we're all going to experience that at one point or the, we are just getting flooded with so many changes and things that we're not excited about, like changes that, it's not like, oh, you won the lottery. Yay. No, this is not, this is not that kind of surprise. So one of the things that I will notice when I'm in that state is, okay, can I take a deep breath? Like, can I, when we talked about being present, can I catch that thought and that sense of panic coming on enough to just stop for a moment and take care of myself in the moment? You could do this anywhere, in your car, in your home, in your, wherever you are. And then I think of, okay, that's me imagining the stuff I'm scared about. Like, these are my fears. But your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between true or false. So you could use that to imagine what you want to occur as well, just as much as you can imagine, fear is the misuse of imagination. Like, so that's another thing, again, being that, having that sense of awareness of like, well, what would calm me down? What is this helping me right now? Is there anything I can do about this panic, like right now? Or is this largely out of my hands? What is in my hands? And so sometimes I'll even like look down at the ground and be like, okay, my feet are on the ground. Like, I'm here. I ate today. I have food. I have a home. I have love, so sometimes it's literally just like getting that grounded in what we actually have, because that's in our hands right now. And that
so
can calm the fears.
so in terms of what you recommend people do to get rid of undesirable thoughts and feelings, let's just say along these lines, and they're going down that road that you're talking about, it's to uh, get grounded by being grateful, perhaps, of what they do have, or how would you answer?
Yeah,
How would you?
it's not so much a getting rid of, although I know a lot of people want to get rid of it. Like, we have undesirable feelings that don't feel like we don't want to hang out with them. And there's lots of different ways and techniques that might be helpful to somebody. In terms of healthiness, I think there's definitely a huge value in honoring your feelings. So when I notice that panic, I'm not denying that I'm scared. It's like, yeah, this is scary. And like, I really don't know what I'm going to do if XYZ happens. Sheesh, and so allowing your feeling to be heard and felt and okay, taking care of yourself, just like you would a little kid who's upset about something, taking care of yourself. Sometimes if it's just, I can't even shut it off, like, oh, I'm so worried, you could do something called a dump where you dump out all your feelings and write it all out or say it out loud. Like, I'm worried about this and this and this. Allow yourself, a few minutes or a half an hour to do that. But can you come back and like, it kind of comes back to like, what's in your hands, what's out of your hands? What would you ideally like to feel? You have that in your hands. You can process through your feelings so that you can feel a different way. And that's a skill. It's not like turn a switch on, turn a switch off. It is a skill, but probably the first step is even noticing what you feel in the first place.
Is it a lot like, you hear some people talk about the one thing that we do get to choose every day is our attitude?
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
That is in your hands.
Right.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
is this a similar learned skill?
Yes. Yeah. And it's a practice just like anything else. Like, if I said, oh, well, go drive a stick shift, but you've never driven a stick shift. Well, you could read the manual. But at one point you're going to need to get out there and, either figure it out or have someone teach you and figure it out. And you're going to stall a few times. It's going to be a little rusty. And then eventually you do it enough, you're going to be okay. So in that sense, I think people seem to think like, well, I should just be emotionally intelligent. I'll just like be present and grateful. And then voila, I should have everything I want. It's like, well, there's still some practicing. And how are you when you're emotionally triggered? Like how much capacity do you have for that? What's in your system that makes it so that you do X, Y, and Z? And each of us are so different, so
Right.
incredibly different.
So what are some of the biggest obstacles people face when when they do try to change their thinking, but kind of fall back into their similar habits?
Yeah, I think we can expect to fall back into our similar habits, especially if we kind of take our eye off the ball again. Like it's like if you work out, you and then you stop working. You develop these muscles, and then you kind of stop working out. Well, your muscles are going to kind of go back to the way it was before because they've been that way for longer. So that's why we've been teaching workshops for 28 years because people come. It's not because they're not learning or broken or anything like that. It's because it's this, oh yeah, I forgot I do that. Oh yeah, right. Oh, like we are so complex as human beings. So the obstacle I think that we get that gets in our way is thinking we're just going to do one thing. I'll just create a vision board and then I have my vision. I'll just make a gratitude journal and then I'll be grateful. I mean, that's what I would call like a surface treatment. I've done gratitude journals for years. I have a vision board. I'm not against those things, but thinking that just doing that one thing is going to completely transform your thinking it's just like a little tip of the iceberg. So putting in some of that work to really understand yourself, I think is one of the most powerful things you can do to make change your life.
And are there big myths that, in terms of personal development, that keep people from truly transforming their lives?
Yeah, and it's funny because we've actually talked about them a little bit. Like some of the myths are, well, how do I get rid of this feeling? I never want to feel this way again. Well, you're a human being and you're going to feel feelings. And actually, that's what we want. Most of the challenges we see are people don't know how to feel their feelings, want to shove it under the rug, don't want to talk about it, don't want to feel uncomfortable, apologize for crying. Like I don't know if you ever had that experience where someone's like, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be crying. I don't know why I'm crying. Like, oh my gosh, well, it's a human emotion. It happens. Um, it's your body saying something. So we, as a society and individually, we can really do we could do some better work in allowing our emotions to be felt and learning how to responsibly feel them. So, and work through them in a way that's really healthy.
If somebody wants to explore their own situations at this time, What's the best way for them to see the kind of work that you do, get in touch with you, that kind of thing?
Great question. Thank you. You can always go to productivelearning.com, and that there's an opportunity. You can sign up for our newsletter to see what we have coming up, and there's a workshop calendar as well. There's also a link on there to schedule a call with me if you are like, oh, I really want to ask her about my situation. How do I deal with this? How do I deal with that? Is there something I could do for this? Certainly you can schedule a call with me on that site. There's a way to do that. And my name is a little different on it's spelled different. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn at LEISA-REID.
Do people ever ask you what's the difference between what you do and therapy?
Yeah, I do get that question a lot, and it really depends on the person's situation. Sometimes they do both. I would say, having a coach, having a productive learning, and having a therapist are a great trifecta for anybody's emotional, mental health. I definitely, for certain situations, I think therapy is totally appropriate. And that would be if you're dealing with, you maybe want to work through some serious, significant trauma. Therapy is absolutely where you want to begin, or at least have that in addition to. All of our work is done in a group setting. So, there's certain things that are going to be more effectively worked on in a one-on-one situation, and just maybe they're more private. That's not to say that we don't have people who've had trauma. Everybody really has had some degree of trauma, and sometimes that's shared in our workshops, but we're not there to medically, therapeutically work through that trauma for that person. Typically we're more on the, what I would say, thriving side. Like, people are like, hey, my life's actually pretty awesome, but I know that I have more potential. Like, there's a little dream, or there's a little thing, like a little whisper in my mind that, like, I know there's more than what I have here. And I'm not mad about it, but I'm just like, interesting. How can I tap into this thing that has eluded me, and I kind of been thinking about it and pushing it to the side. So we're definitely more on the, I would say, like the thriving side versus the surviving side.
Okay, that's definitely helpful. It does bring back a personal memory of my own. And when I was dating before my first marriage, so this would be the mid '80s, we were invited as a couple to attend something called Summit Workshop
Yeah.
in Los Angeles.
Yeah,
and I want to say it sounds similar to me.
Yes. So our founder was with Summit for 10 years.
Okay.
Prior to, and then Summit closed, and then in 1992 he opened his own thing. And so he's written the majority of our workshops, and we have a different. So there's a lot of fundamentals that are similar, but then we're a family-owned business, so we have certain ways in which we deliver things that are different. So yeah.
Okay. Well, I will tell you that it had a positive effect, because we had been engaged for 3 years but had not set a date. And after a particular seminar we went to, we set a specific date to get married. Wow. So we acted on something that we didn't really, I don't know, knew what was holding us back, but we moved forward. So it was good.
Exciting. Good.
Thank you for that summary. And I know right now it's very timely, I'm sure, for a lot of people. And hopefully they'll look you up at productivelearning.com. So I want to shift gears for a moment before we close. And what we're going to do now has nothing to do with what we talked about.
Okay.
It's just a light way to finish our session together. And I call it our lightning round of questions.
Oh,
so
cool.
I'll ask
I'm
you
ready.
questions.
I got my finger on the buzzer. I'm ready to go.
And these are just, maybe it's the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay. So Leisa, we're going to go car shopping when this show is over. And you get to pick out a new car, and money is no object. What are you going to get?
I want to get that 4-door Porsche. There's like a Porsche out there that has 4 doors. I don't know.
Okay. It's called the Panamera, and I have it.
Oh my gosh! I didn't know that.
So not only can you take a look at it, you can drive it if you like.
Oh, cool. Next time we see each other in person, I'm getting a ride.
Yeah, for
Well, I
sure.
shouldn't say that because I'm going to go for a drive in your car. There we go.
There we go. Okay, here's an interesting question for you. If you could be the best in the world at something other than what you do now, what would it be?
Hmm. A singer?
Singer. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
that'd be
There's
cool.
no,
I'm definitely
right,
not that right
there's
now.
no wrong answers, Lisa. Right? Whatever that passion is that you dream about, I think I'd like to be the best golfer in the world, whatever, not going to happen, but maybe I'll get better if I talk to Mr. Reid.
There you go.
Um, okay, choose two items to be part of your last meal. So not ingredients, but two dishes that
Yeah.
you say
Okay.
has to be there.
Cheesecake and steak.
All right.
Not cheese steak, but cheesecake and steak.
Cheesesteak is not a bad answer either. What favorite adult beverage will you consume with it?
Probably some Pinot Noir.
Very nice. Last question, Lisa. Um, you're going to go on a vacation somewhere you've never been. What's on that list, right? What's next on that list, or the highest on that list?
I will say Bali.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's on mine. It's on mine as well. So, Lisa, thank you so much for being my guest today
Thank
on A
you.
Taste of the Beach, and continued, good wishes and prayers and everything else for your family to remain safe, healthy, and positive.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
You bet. And thank you for your time today. Take care.